I took the job because I needed money. That's the simplest explanation I can give, and honestly the only one that makes sense now. When you're broke, new in town, and your bank account is dropping closer to zero every day, you stop questioning things that normally might feel off. You stop trusting your instincts. You start telling yourself that weird details are just coincidences. That's how I ended up working the night shift at a gas station that most people around Dry Hollow try not to talk about. Dry Hollow is a small mountain town in northern Colorado. If you blink while driving through it, you might miss it entirely. A diner, a mechanic shop, a church, a post office, and maybe a couple dozen houses scattered along a quiet highway surrounded by dense pine forest. 3 miles outside town, sitting alone beside that highway, is Dry Hollow Fuel. That's where I worked. The place looks normal enough during the day. 4 gas pumps under a faded canopy. A small square building with large windows facing the road. A flickering sign that hums quietly when the wind blows. But at night the station feels different. At night it feels like the forest presses in closer. The job listing caught my attention immediately. $28 an hour for a night shift gas station attendant. From 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. That's double what most stations pay. I assumed it was a mistake. But when I called the number listed, an older man answered and simply said I could come by that afternoon. His name was Carl. Carl looked like the kind of man who had been standing behind that counter for most of his life. Thick gray beard, weathered skin, and eyes that seemed tired even when he smiled. The interview lasted maybe 5 minutes. He asked if I had reliable transportation. I said yes. He asked if I could stay awake all night. I said yes. Then he reached under the counter and slid a piece of paper across to me. "These are the rules for the night shift," he said. I expected something normal. Lock the doors after midnight. Don't leave the register unattended. Call the police if someone causes trouble. But the list I read that afternoon was anything but normal. The first rule was simple enough. Lock the front doors at exactly 11:30 p.m. After that, serve customers through the window only. Then things started getting strange. If someone knocks on the door after 11:30 p.m., do not let them inside no matter what they say. If a red pickup truck parks at Pump 3 between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., turn off the lights in the store and remain silent until it leaves. Never acknowledge anyone standing near the tree line across the road. If you hear 3 knocks on the back storage door, do not open it. If the phone rings after 2:30 a.m., do not answer it. If the bathroom camera shows movement while the door is locked, ignore it. If you see headlights moving through the forest behind the station, turn off the outside lights immediately. And the final rule. If you ever feel like someone else is inside the store with you but the cameras show nothing, remain behind the counter and wait for sunrise. I remember looking up from the page. Is this supposed to be some kind of joke? Carl didn't laugh. Do you want the job? He asked. The way he said it made me hesitate. But I needed the money. So I nodded. I'll take it. Carl nodded once. You start tonight. My first shift began at 10 p.m. The evening attendant was a guy named Trevor, probably about my age. Mid-20s. He looked relieved when I walked in. Good, he said. You showed up. Why wouldn't I? I asked. He shrugged. Some people don't come back after their first shift. I laughed. Why? Because of those weird rules? Trevor didn't smile. You read them? Yeah. Follow them. Then he grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. Before leaving, he turned back. "You ever notice how quiet it gets out here?" I looked around. "It's a small town." He shook his head slowly. "No. I mean really quiet." Then he left. The station felt strange the moment the door closed behind him. The kind of silence that makes every small sound seem louder. The hum of the refrigerator. The buzzing of the overhead lights. The wind brushing against the windows. For the first hour, everything felt normal. A couple cars stopped for gas. A truck driver came in for coffee. But by 11:20 p.m. the highway had gone quiet. At exactly 11:30 I locked the front doors. Not because I believed the rule was necessary. Mostly because I didn't want random strangers wandering in during the night. Midnight passed slowly. I scrolled through my phone and drank coffee. Around 12:45 a.m. I walked to the front window and looked out at the road. That's when I noticed something across the highway. At the edge of the tree line. Someone was standing there. Just a dark shape against the forest. At first I thought maybe it was a trick of the light. But the longer I stared, the more certain I became. Someone really was standing there. Perfectly still. Watching the station. I remembered one of the rules. Never acknowledge anyone standing near the tree line across the road. I shook my head. The whole list still felt ridiculous. But I turned away from the window anyway. Better safe than sorry. About 20 minutes later I heard the sound of tires crunching over gravel. A vehicle pulled into the lot. I glanced up. My stomach dropped. A red pickup truck rolled slowly toward the pumps. And stopped at pump 3. I stared at the rule sheet taped behind the register. If a red pickup truck parks at pump 3 between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., turn off the lights and remain silent until it leaves. I almost laughed. But something about the way the truck just sat there, engine idling, made me uneasy. The driver's door slowly opened. A tall man stepped out. Even from across the parking lot I could tell something about him wasn't right. The way he moved was stiff. Almost mechanical. He walked toward the store slowly. Then stopped outside the glass door. And looked straight at me. He smiled. It was the widest smile I had ever seen. Not friendly. Not normal. Just wide. Too wide. Then he raised his hand. Knock. 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 3 slow taps against the glass. Every instinct in my body told me not to open the door. I reached over and shut off the lights. The store went dark except for the faint glow of the refrigerators. Outside, the man leaned closer to the glass. Still smiling. Still staring into the darkness. He knocked again. Harder this time. Then he spoke. I couldn't hear the words through the glass. But his lips moved slowly. And I swear it looked like he said something about the lights. Like he knew they were supposed to be off. I stayed silent. 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes. Finally the man straightened up. He walked back to the truck, got inside, and drove away. The moment his taillights disappeared down the highway, I turned the lights back on. My hands were shaking. But I told myself it was just adrenaline. Just a creepy stranger. Nothing more. About 30 minutes later something else happened. 3 loud knocks echoed from the back hallway. The storage door. I froze. Knock. 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 The sound echoed again. Slow. Deliberate. Nobody should have been behind the building. The storage door opened to a fenced area and dense forest. Yet someone was clearly knocking. I remembered the rule. If you hear 3 knocks on the back door, do not open it. Every horror movie instinct in my brain said not to investigate. So I stayed behind the counter. The knocking continued for nearly a minute. Then it stopped. Around 2:35 a.m. the phone rang. The sound made me jump. I stared at it. The rule sheet was right there. If the phone rings after 2:30 a.m., do not answer. The ringing continued. 7 rings. 8. Then silence. A moment later the security monitor flickered. The bathroom camera turned on. The door was closed. Locked. But the handle was slowly turning. Back and forth. Like someone inside was trying to open it. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. No one had entered the store. Yet the camera clearly showed movement. Then I heard something from the hallway. A soft scratching sound. Like fingernails dragging across the inside of the bathroom door. I forced myself not to move. 5 minutes later the noise stopped. The camera feed went still again. The rest of the shift crawled by. Every shadow felt wrong. Every sound made my heart race. Finally the sky began to lighten. Morning. At 6 a.m. I unlocked the front door. Carl arrived 20 minutes later carrying a coffee. "You make it through the night?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. Then I told him everything. The red truck. The knocking. The bathroom door. Carl listened quietly. Then he nodded. "You followed the rules." "Carl," I said slowly, "what happens if someone doesn't?" He took a sip of coffee. Then looked at me. "Nobody who broke them ever finished their shift." He said it like it was the most normal thing in the world. I worked there for 3 more nights. Each night the same things happened. The red truck. The knocking. The phone call. The bathroom door. But on the 4th night something changed. Something happened that wasn't on the list. And that's when I realized the truth. The rules weren't just there to protect the station. They were there to protect the person working inside it. Because whatever lives in those woods around Dry Hollow is getting smarter. And sooner or later, it's going to learn how to break the rules. And the night that happens, someone working that shift won't make it until sunrise. The 4th night started like the others. I arrived a little before 10, and Carl was already inside behind the counter going through the register. He didn't say much when I walked in, just gave a quiet nod and handed me the keys to the side door. "You remember the rules?" he asked. "Yeah." "Good." That was always the extent of our conversations before a shift. Carl wasn't the kind of man who liked repeating himself. The rules were taped behind the register, and he expected you to follow them without needing reminders. Before leaving, he paused by the door. "Tonight might feel a little different," he said. I frowned. "Different how?" Carl shrugged slightly. "Sometimes things adjust." Then he stepped outside and drove away. That sentence stayed in my head for the first hour of my shift. Sometimes things adjust. I tried not to think about what that meant. The evening traffic was the same as usual. A couple of locals stopped in before the late hours hit. One truck driver came in for coffee and a sandwich. Around 11:20 p.m., the last customer left. By 11:30, I locked the doors. The station became silent again. The forest outside looked darker than usual that night. Clouds had rolled in, covering most of the moonlight. The highway was just a thin gray strip disappearing into the blackness between the trees. Around midnight, I walked over to the front window. Across the road, near the tree line, I immediately saw the same shape as before. Someone standing there. Still. Watching. This time I didn't stare as long. I remembered the rule. Never acknowledge anyone standing near the tree line. So I turned away and went back behind the counter. But even without looking, I could feel it. The strange pressure of being watched. Around 12:55 a.m. I heard the low rumble of an engine approaching. I already knew what it would be. The red pickup truck. Sure enough, it rolled slowly into the lot and stopped at pump 3. My stomach tightened. Even though I'd seen it 3 nights in a row, the sight of that truck still made my skin crawl. The engine idled for a moment. Then the driver's door opened. The same tall man stepped out. Same stiff movements. Same unnatural smile. This time I didn't hesitate. I shut off the lights immediately. The store fell into darkness. Through the faint glow of the refrigerators I watched him approach the door again. He stopped inches from the glass. His smile seemed even wider tonight, like it had stretched further across his face. He knocked. 3 slow taps. Knock. 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 I stayed silent. He leaned closer to the glass again. Then he spoke. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see his lips moving. Slow. Deliberate. And then something strange happened. The man's eyes shifted slightly. Not toward me, but toward the security cameras mounted in the corners of the store. Like he was checking them. After a few seconds he stepped back from the door. But instead of returning to the truck immediately, he walked slowly along the front of the building, disappearing out of view. My heart started pounding. Because there was nothing in the rules about him walking around the building. I waited. 30 seconds passed. Then a minute. Then suddenly. Knock. 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 3 loud hits came from the back hallway. The storage door. My entire body went cold. The red truck rule had just happened. And now the knocking rule. Both at the same time. That wasn't normal. The knocks came again. Louder. More aggressive. Knock. 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 I stared down the dark hallway leading to the back. Something about the sound was wrong. It didn't feel like someone politely knocking. It sounded impatient. Almost angry. I forced myself to stay behind the counter. The rule was clear. Do not open the door. After about 30 seconds the knocking stopped. Then I heard footsteps outside again. Moments later the red truck's engine started. Headlights swept across the front windows as the truck pulled back onto the highway. The moment it disappeared, I turned the lights back on. My hands were shaking. I walked slowly toward the back hallway. Not to open the door. Just to check it. The storage door was still closed. But something caught my eye. There were 3 deep scratches carved into the metal surface. Long. Vertical. Like something with claws had dragged them across the door. I stepped back immediately. A chill crawled up my spine. Whatever knocked hadn't been using knuckles. I returned to the counter quickly. For the next hour nothing happened. But the silence felt heavier than usual. Around 2:30 a.m. I checked the clock. 30 seconds later the phone rang. Right on schedule. I didn't move. The ringing echoed through the empty store. 7 rings. 8. 9. Then it stopped. But this time something new happened. Instead of silence afterward, the bathroom camera flickered on immediately. I looked at the monitor. The bathroom door was closed. Locked. But the handle started turning again. Slowly. Back and forth. Then something appeared beneath the door. A shadow. Like someone standing inside. Except the shadow looked wrong. Too tall. It stretched across the floor farther than a normal person's would. Then I heard the scratching sound again. Fingernails. Dragging slowly across the inside of the door. This time it was louder. More desperate. I forced myself to look away from the screen. The rules said ignore it. So I ignored it. After a few minutes the sound stopped again. But something about the silence afterward felt worse. Like the thing inside the bathroom was waiting. Watching. Around 3:10 a.m. something happened that had never happened before. The lights outside the station flickered. Then went out completely. The parking lot fell into darkness. I rushed to the window. The forest behind the station was pitch black. And then I saw it. Headlights. Moving slowly through the trees. Not on the road. Inside the forest. My stomach dropped. Another rule. If you see headlights in the woods behind the station, turn off the outside lights immediately. But the lights were already off. That meant the rule had been triggered before I even saw them. The headlights moved slowly between the trees. Stopping. Then moving again. Like someone driving through the forest with no road. The beams finally stopped directly behind the station. Then they turned off. Everything went completely dark. I stood there holding my breath. Waiting. A full minute passed. Then 2. Then a sound came from somewhere inside the store. Soft. Slow footsteps. My blood ran cold. Because the security cameras showed nothing. And suddenly I remembered the last rule. If you feel like someone else is inside the store but the cameras show nothing, remain behind the counter and wait until sunrise. I didn't move. The footsteps continued. Somewhere between the aisles. Slow. Dragging. Like someone walking in circles. The cameras showed empty aisles. Empty shelves. Nothing. But the footsteps kept moving. Getting closer. Closer. Until they stopped directly in front of the counter. I stared at the empty space across from me. The air felt colder. And for just a second, I thought I saw something. A faint shape. Like heat distortion in the air. Something tall. Standing there. Watching me. And then it leaned forward slightly. Like it was trying to see my face. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. And I didn't move. Because something deep in my gut told me that if I acknowledged it, if I reacted at all, that would break the rule. And if I broke the rule, I might not live long enough to see the sunrise. I didn't move. Not even a little. The thing standing in front of the counter wasn't fully visible, but something about the air there felt wrong. Like heat rising off asphalt in the summer. A slight distortion, barely noticeable unless you were staring directly at it. And I was staring directly at it. The footsteps had stopped. Whatever it was standing there. Right across from me. The cameras above showed nothing. Just empty aisles and a quiet store. But the feeling of someone else being there was undeniable. I remembered the rule. If you feel like someone else is inside the store with you but the cameras show nothing, remain behind the counter and wait until sunrise. So that's what I did. I kept my hands on the counter and stared straight ahead, pretending there was nothing there. Minutes passed. Or at least it felt like minutes. The silence was unbearable. I could hear my own breathing echoing slightly in the empty building. I could feel my heart beating in my chest. Then I heard something. A slow inhale. Right in front of me. Like someone leaning across the counter and breathing in through their nose. I almost reacted. Almost. But I forced myself to stay still. The air distortion moved slightly to the left, then to the right. Like the thing was circling the counter, studying me. The footsteps started again. Soft. Dragging. It walked down the aisle behind the counter area, toward the refrigerators. I kept my eyes forward. The sound of the cooler doors rattling lightly came next. One of them slowly creaked open, then closed. The footsteps moved again, back toward the aisles. Then silence. Complete silence. I didn't dare look around. I didn't even check the cameras. I just stayed there. The clock ticked forward. 3:45 a.m. 4:10 a.m. At some point I realized the outside lights had turned back on. The parking lot was faintly visible again through the windows. But the forest still looked darker than usual. Around 4:30 a.m. something else happened. A car pulled into the lot. Headlights washed across the windows. My stomach twisted with confusion. Cars almost never stopped this late. Especially after everything that had already happened. The vehicle parked at Pump 1. I glanced at the cameras. A dark sedan. Engine running. A man stepped out. At first nothing seemed strange about him. He walked up to the door and knocked lightly. But then I remembered the rule. After 11:30 p.m. no one gets let inside. I walked to the window beside the door. "What do you need?" I asked through the glass. The man looked nervous. His eyes kept darting toward the forest behind the station. "Please," he said. "Can I come in for a minute?" I shook my head. "Store's closed. I can sell you something through the window." He leaned closer. "You don't understand. Something's wrong out there." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" He pointed toward the road. "I've been driving for 20 minutes, and I keep seeing the same truck behind me." My heart skipped. "What kind of truck?" He hesitated. "Red pickup." Every muscle in my body went tense. The man continued quickly. "It doesn't pass me. It doesn't get closer. It just stays the same distance back. Every turn I take, it follows." He swallowed hard. "And when I stopped here, it drove past. But it slowed down." I looked out toward the highway. The road was empty. "What did the driver look like?" I asked. The man shook his head. "I couldn't see clearly. But I swear he was smiling." A cold shiver ran down my spine. The same truck. The same man. But the rules said the truck only came between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. It was already past 4:30. Which meant something had changed. "Look," the man said, voice shaking slightly. "Can I just wait here for a few minutes?" I hesitated. The rules didn't say anything about letting someone stay outside. But something about his panic felt genuine. "Stay in your car," I said. "You'll be fine." He nodded and walked back toward his sedan. But just as he reached the door, his body froze. He slowly looked toward the highway. I followed his gaze. Headlights appeared in the distance. 2 white beams cutting through the darkness. And even from far away, I knew exactly what vehicle they belonged to. The red pickup truck. The sedan driver backed away from his car. "What the hell?" he whispered. The truck rolled slowly into the station. And stopped. Not at pump 3 this time. It stopped directly behind the sedan. The engine idled. Neither of us moved. The driver door opened. The tall man stepped out. That same unnatural smile stretched across his face. He looked at the sedan driver first, then slowly turned his head toward the store, toward me, and for the first time since I started working there, he waved. A slow, deliberate wave. Then he began walking toward the sedan driver. The man outside looked terrified. "What does he want?" he asked. I didn't answer. Because deep down, I already knew. The rules only protected the person working inside the station, not anyone else. The tall man stopped a few feet from the sedan driver, still smiling. Then he spoke. I couldn't hear the words from inside, but the driver's face went pale. The man shook his head quickly. "No," he said loudly. The smiling man tilted his head slightly, then took one step closer. The sedan driver turned and ran toward the store. He started banging on the glass. "Let me in!" he shouted. "Please!" Every instinct in my body screamed to unlock the door. But the rule was clear. After 11:30 p.m. no one gets let inside. No matter what they say. Behind him, the tall man stopped walking. Still smiling. Watching. Waiting. I felt sick. But I didn't move. The sedan driver pounded harder. "Open the door!" I shook my head slowly. "I can't." He turned around just as the tall man reached him. What happened next was quick. Too quick. The smiling man grabbed the driver by the shoulders. The man screamed. And then both of them disappeared into the darkness behind the pumps. Just like that. Gone. The parking lot went silent again. I stood frozen behind the counter. Heart racing. The sedan driver never came back. The red pickup truck was gone when I looked outside again. And when Carl arrived that morning, I told him everything. He listened quietly. Just like always. Then he sighed. "That's why the rule exists," he said. "So people like you don't end up out there." I swallowed hard. What was that thing?" Carl stared out the window toward the forest. "That," he said slowly, "is why the night shift pays so well." I quit the next day. Packed my things. Left Dry Hollow before sunset. But sometimes late at night, when I'm driving on quiet highways, I'll glance in the rearview mirror, and every once in a while, I see a pair of headlights staying the exact same distance behind me. And no matter how fast I drive, they never get any closer. But they never fall behind either. And if you ever find yourself driving through a small town late at night, and you see a gas station sitting alone beside the road, you might want to stop before midnight. Because if you arrive after the doors are locked, and someone inside refuses to let you in, it's probably not because they don't want to help. It's because they know something you don't. And sometimes, following the rules is the only thing keeping someone alive until sunrise. If you enjoyed tonight's story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Bella Dark Tales. And let me know in the comments what you would have done if you were working that shift. Would you have followed the rules? Or would curiosity have gotten the better of you? And if you have your own real-life scary encounter you'd like to share, send it to belladarktales@gmail.com.